Today, we're joined by Candace Ramsey, a transformational coach, speaker, and founder of Mahogany Coaching and Consulting. With her unique expertise in leadership, personal growth, and mental wellness, Candace will guide us through powerful insights on finding clarity, purpose, and joy. Let's dive in. Candace Ramsey, thank you for being on this show today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. So, my first question to you is, what inspired you to create Mahogany Coaching and Consulting, your company? And can you
Oh,
your personal journey towards self-mastery and leadership?
yeah. I love that you asked this question actually, because, my journey rooted from the fact, let me start this by saying I am my ideal client, right? And so I shifted careers several times. I'm a Army veteran, and then I became a corporate consultant, and I became a licensed psychotherapist and also a certified coach. And what I found in different spaces that I was operating in was when I was doing the type of work that went against the grain, against what's natural for me, and, against what I would like to call my flow, I
Mhm.
found that I was either stagnant. I found that I was working a little bit harder to even just kind of keep up with some of my peers. I found that I was going in a direction where I wasn't happy.
Mm.
And so I started my journey actually as a career coach because
Oh,
I realized, I jumped ahead a few steps, but part of my journey was as a consultant. I was an organizational development consultant. And a part of that work was when I go into organizations, I have to know how to use a lot of the assessments and the tools that I took into some of these organizations. And I would take them myself.
yeah.
And as I sat back with some coaches I was working with and I was reflecting, I realized I wasn't in the wrong spaces, right? I was operating in a space that wasn't optimal for me. And so I launched my business to help other professionals like myself find their zone of excellence and their zone of genius.
So what motivated you to focus specifically on women and leadership teams in your work?
Yeah. Yeah. The reason why I wanted to focus specifically on women, because there is a need, I'm glad that you actually addressed this, because there is a need for self discovery and self awareness with men. What I've learned, I'm actually doing a focus group in about 2 weeks, another focus group, but I've done market research, I've done focus groups, I've done surveys. Men don't respond.
Mm. And why is that, do you think?
I think a part of it is societal expectations. I think that's a part of it. I think that we are in this era of men beginning a journey of vulnerability is okay.
Mm,
Because I think that men for a long time have been conditioned to not be vulnerable, that
true.
they have to, from the dawn of time, men have been the protectors, the providers. They had to be stoic and they had to, be the man of the family. And
Yes.
I think we're entering into this age now where vulnerability is becoming more commonplace with men. And so I do think that the work that I do will catch up with men. But I believe right now, more women are inclined to invest in this type of work. And the reason why I said that, it's very timely that you asked this question,
Yeah.
because I put out an invitation to this focus group I'm hosting, and I've had 10 women respond and one man.
Oh, interesting. Jeez. Wow. Wow. So let me dive into this a bit deeper. Let's go into the core philosophy and your approach. So you have a six pillar self mastery framework,
I
and
do.
how does that stand? Like, maybe we can talk about that, and we
Mhm.
can talk about how does that stand out from other coaching methods.
Yeah, yeah. So I developed this six pillar framework. It's three dimensions. Let me explain it first. So I
Yeah,
have three
please.
dimensions. The first one is emotional and personal development dimension. And this is all about building resiliency, self-resiliency, and emotional intelligence. And within each pillar, so within my emotional and personal development dimension,
Mhm.
there's two pillars. So I have the being pillar and the feeling pillar. And my being is about all of what I do. It's about self-awareness, self-discovery, and self-acceptance. And the filling pillar it deals with emotional intelligence and building more empathy. Then I have my cognitive and interpersonal skills dimension. And this one is all about how you think and how you interact with the world around you.
Mhm.
And within that dimension, we have the thinking pillar, which helps you really enhance your thinking style, but also be able to take perspective. And then I have my communicating pillar, which is understanding your communication style and how you connect with others. So this is about communicating for connection. And then my last dimension is personal effectiveness dimension. And this is all about action.
Yes.
And within this dimension, we have the leading pillar, which is about your self-management, your self-discipline. And then I also have my doing pillar, which is all about breaking free from limiting beliefs and taking action towards new habits that are going to serve you in your life. And the reason why my approach is different than what other coaches may do is because I have an integration between the Enneagram and my 6-pillar framework. And so I kind of marry those two together, and based on your personality type or based on your Enneagram type and what we assess that you need to work on based on my 6 pillars, then I have a very interesting and unique approach to development.
Well, let's talk about your Enneagram assessment for a second, because I took that assessment. I did it, I think it was last week, and we can explain what my rating means to people. But I'm quite open to say I was, assessed at it as a number 7, which means enthusiastic visionary. And maybe you can just elaborate to help everybody else understand what exactly that means.
Yes, yes. So if you're not familiar with the Enneagram, it is basically a typing system to let you know how you view the world around you and how you navigate the world around you. And what I really like about the Enneagram in comparison to some other typing systems or personality assessments is that the Enneagram focuses on the why, where some other assessments focuses on the what.
Mhm.
And so they'll say what you do, but they won't get to the crux of the behavior
Yeah.
behind your actions. And so a type 7, the visionary, the enthusiastic visionary, type 7s are, they're
Just be kind.
optimistic. I'm sorry.
I said, be kind to me, be kind.
Yes, I will always be kind. Actually, a type 7 is a beautiful type. You're optimistic, you are fun-loving, entrepreneurial. Some type 7s are just uninhibited. And so, type 7s, they see the world as full of possibilities. And each type within the Enneagram has a worldview. And that is the type 7's worldview. You
Yeah.
see the world as full of possibilities, and you want to explore as much of this big, beautiful world as possible.
Well, that's good to know.
Yes.
Something that came up that I've read before in the past, there's a lot of self-sabotaging amongst people, and that's unfortunately that's a behavior that seems to be very, very common now. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. Well, self-sabotaging really is it's a protective measure.
Mm.
What we tend to do, and you know what, I'm going to actually tie this back to the Enneagram, because this is a really great way to conceptualize how the Enneagram and how I work to help people overcome things like self-sabotage.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use my own type. I'm an Enneagram type 9. And each and every one of the types have a core fear. And my core fear is that of conflict. And so type 9s are peacemakers. They like to see the world in a state of harmony. And so we tend to be a little bit more agreeable and a little bit more conflict avoidant. And if I think about it from a self-sabotaging perspective, let me think about it from a career perspective.
Yeah.
In the workplace, let's say that there's an opportunity that I might be up for, a colleague might be up for, maybe another couple, maybe it's a big promotion.
Hmm.
And it's something that I desire in my heart, and it's something that I really kind of want to go after. But because I see the world as a place where we can't necessarily all harmonize, and I try to avoid conflict, I will probably be a lot less likely to be aggressive or assertive in going out for this role. Whereas maybe my colleague who might be a type one or maybe a type
Hmm.
eights are very assertive. They may go out a little bit harder for this role or this promotion or this opportunity at work. And then I may sit back and think to myself, why didn't I do this? Or all the things that we tell ourselves, right?
Right.
So we have all of these limiting beliefs on why we didn't get the opportunity or why we didn't go out for the opportunity. And I self sabotaged because for me, I'm seeing the world as a place where it's full of conflict. And I like to avoid that conflict and stay in my little bubble of harmony. And so part of coaching, part of this personal growth and personal development coaching is to help people see some of these blind spots that they may have, or to see some of these self-sabotaging behaviors that they may have that may be completely unconscious to them.
So, what role too does self-awareness play in overcoming these limiting patterns as well?
It plays a huge role. It plays a huge role. Um, Back to what I said, it's about uncovering these blind spots, right?
Right.
I think we all navigate through life with parts of ourselves that we just cannot see.
Yeah.
And it's just, and it really, self-awareness. I love this topic. This is such a passion of mine. I actually recently did a reel about this, about self-awareness. But there's different components that you need to become truly self-aware. And a lot of people will say, can I just journal? And can I just reflect? And, can I just sit back and think about, how I'm showing up in the world? You can,
Mm.
but we have our biases, right? And so I can only see to the extent of my own experiences. I see the world through either the rose colored glasses, the gray colored glasses, or the black colored glasses that I'm staring through.
Right.
I need the perspective of other people and other things for me to reflect on. I just can't do it alone. And so self awareness plays a huge part in why we self sabotage, because maybe we have not sat down and took the measures to really understand the inner workings of how we navigate through the world.
So, let's talk about communication then as well. Because how do you define communication in a team or organizational setting?
Oh, yeah. So communication is interesting, in a team setting. And I love that you asked this as a follow up to self awareness,
Mhm.
because the more self aware you are, the better you're able to communicate for purpose and for connection.
Yeah.
And when I say purpose, I'm talking about the message that I'm trying to convey. Because a lot of times, and this goes back to our own personal biases, right? A lot of times we're so in our heads, just as human beings. It's human nature to just be completely stuck in our own minds and the way that we think that things are coming across.
Yes.
Now, if we understand our communication style, then we are more likely to get our message across. And I'll use another kind of dynamic here, right? I talked about the type 8 and the type 9
Yeah.
before. And although they're very close together, and a type 9 can borrow some traits from a type 8, and a type 8 can borrow some traits from a type 9, they're very different types. A
Yes.
type 9 is a type 9 is a very harmonious, peacemaker, easygoing type, where a type 8 is more of what you would think as like a driving type. And so they're very assertive. They may go into a meeting, be the first one to speak up.
Yes.
And so if they're in a meeting together and they're on a team together, a type 8 could very well bulldoze a type 9.
Mm.
And they may just come in because it's natural for them to sit down and just start to, spew their thoughts and their, perceptions of how something at work may or should function, right? And so they're not cognizant of the fact that they are not receiving what other people are saying to them. And
Yeah.
so self-awareness is a huge part of that. If they know that that's their type and that they're a driver type, they have to take conscious effort to say, let me slow down, let me receive what other people are saying to me. And so I love using the Enneagram for type dynamics just for this type of reason, so that we can understand each other's perspective taking type, how we see the world around us, and also our communication styles.
Well, that's a perfect lead into personal growth because there are a lot of women that you coach. So,
Mhm.
why do you think self confidence and fear of judgment are a recurring struggle for women
Mm.
and personal growth?
Yeah, yeah. So fear of judgment, I'm actually going to start there first. You know what? Actually, I'm going to tie those two together because confidence makes space for us to be able to release this fear of judgment that we have,
Yeah.
right? I believe that it's human nature for us to judge and not want to be judged, right? Everything in essence is a judgment.
Yes. True.
Everything, it doesn't necessarily, I'm not going to get into a whole philosophical standpoint, but everything is a judgment one way or the other.
Yes. Yes.
So I think what needs to happen, and why this is such a recurring thing for us, is that we have to be very self-accepting of who we are as a people in order to release this fear of judgment that we have,
Then
and also to be able to grow and to develop our confidence.
so, but how do we do that? How do we help women align
Mhm.
with their true selves and
Mhm.
feeling more confident? And how
Right.
do you do that through your coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the foundation of what I do. And, essentially we just sit down and, I work with women to really understand their what's at the core of their behaviors, their patterns, their actions, all of the things. And so if a woman came to me and said, you know what, when I step into a room, people look at me and they say, "Oh, you're so confident and you're so this and you're so that and you're so put together and all of these things." But she says, inside, I don't feel what it is that they're seeing in me. And I wish that I could see it. And instantly for me, that kind of confidence trigger goes off. And okay, well, if she's not seeing it and other people are seeing it, there's a misalignment here somewhere.
Yeah.
Let's figure this out. And so when we sit down and we look at what your type is, what you're naturally inclined to do when you're in a state of just being your best version of yourself, and you're not trying to perform for work, you're not trying to perform for your spouse and your children and your mother, and societal expectations is what drives our confidence or lack thereof,
Yeah.
and some of the behaviors and some of the things that we might engage in because other people have an expectation that we do things a certain kind of way.
True.
Once I work with
True.
somebody and they really start to feel and they say, you know what, I love this thing about me that we're uncovering. This is one of the things that make me feel like I'm being the best version of myself. Then we'll figure out how to go about showing that to the world, that thing that you are starting to love about yourself. It's uncovering, it's accepting, and then it's exposing it to the world.
Oh, I love that. It's so true. It's so true. Emotional intelligence. Let's talk about that for a second. How does emotional intelligence factor into your coaching with women? But actually, I don't want to just say with women, with
Yeah.
anyone that you're coaching.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yes. So emotional intelligence, right? This is one of the things that I am really intentional about. Being a trained and licensed therapist,
Mhm.
I recognize that emotional regulation, which is a part of emotional intelligence, is not as common as we would like it to be. And part of the work, and feeling is one of my pillars within my framework, is an area where we spend a lot of time, because one of the things that I know to be true is that the hardest part of emotional regulation, which leads into emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
is being able to name what's going on for us at the time when it's happening for us.
Yes.
Right. I think a lot of people have difficulty with identification when it comes to their emotions, and they may confuse it with something else. And it can therefore trickle into other areas of our lives. Right. So I'm going to give you an example. If something happens, maybe in the workplace, where I feel a sense of embarrassment, I don't recognize in the moment that it's embarrassment for me, because what I start to feel is anger.
Yes. Right.
And then when I start to feel anger, my behaviors are that of a person that is angry. I communicate in a way that's angry, right? I may retract and withdraw like a person that's angry.
So,
And then the
if
people,
saying that, then Candace, how do you help people
Mhm.
develop greater emotional resilience then?
Yes, yes. So, what I have people do is actually start to become more familiar with your feelings and your emotions. And the way that you become more familiar with that is you start to journal about it. When you have an experience, you journal about that experience. What happened for you? How did you react? What did you say? What did you do? And then you bring those back to the coaching session, and let's talk about them. Let's talk about the situation. Let's talk about what triggered you. Let's talk about what behaviors you did. And then we'll say, what was it about that particular emotion that made you go into a defensive behavior or a defensive action? And once you start to really identify what is cyclical for you,
Yeah.
you start to develop an emotional resiliency. You
Yeah.
start to recognize, because what it's mostly about is recognizing your triggers and being able to be, what's the word I'm looking for, a little bit more resilient to your triggers.
Yeah. So does vulnerability have a role to play in here? Do you see that?
Vulnerability has a huge role to play, because if you are not open and receptive to what you're feeling internally, a coach and a therapist can only take a client as far as a client is willing to go, because I can't see what's inside of you.
Yeah.
I can't reach in there and touch you. I need for you to be able to say, Candace, I'm struggling. And so vulnerability is a huge part of that. And it starts with vulnerability with yourself, and then vulnerability with the person that you're working with. And then it can filter into the other areas of your life.
Then how do you coach someone then who struggles with that negative self-talk
Mhm.
and that vulnerability?
Yeah. So the way that I start to work with people who struggle with vulnerability is we really have to get at the crux of why they are so resistant to being vulnerable. And typically, this is like this negative self-talk, these limiting beliefs, all of these things that we struggle with, they typically come from something that we've experienced somewhere in our life. And it's really a matter of uncovering the root of this thing that they may be struggling with. I actually have a course called Liberating Catalyst, and it focuses on overcoming limiting beliefs. And it's really about just talking through journaling, doing a bit of visualization, and trying to, there are some times where individuals may require therapy to get to that point, and it's more than a coach can do.
Right, right.
But a lot of times it's really just about having conversations about where some of these things may have come from, asking insightful questions, and allowing the person to really sit with themselves and figure out where these beliefs may have come from.
So how do you hope that your work will help empower some of your clients and their long-term visions?
Jackie, I am on a mission to increase the world's self-awareness so that we can have more love, more harmony, and more satisfaction in our lives. Because what I have learned in all of my years, all of my relationships, all of my, professional endeavors, everything that I have come face to face with in my life, I realize it is because we are protecting ourselves, or we have blind spots that we can't see, or, it's just the world inherently is not a bad place.
Yeah.
And the people in the world are inherently not bad people. And I think that the more that we can spread this message of self awareness, self discovery, and personal growth, the more people in general, not just women, but the more people in general will be empowered to have thriving, loving relationships, careers where they feel satisfied and fulfilled, and family relationships where they can, maybe mend things that were broken because, they have this fear of judgment or this fear of vulnerability. And so I'm glad that you asked that. And I really do hope that my work makes this ripple effect impact that I'm trying to make. And I just want to empower people worldwide to love themselves and others just a little bit more.
Well, I think it will. But you've opened up another question for me, especially
Sure.
if it's happened, in the
Hmm.
United States in the last 3 or 4 months. I
Hmm.
just want to talk about diversity and inclusion for a second.
Yeah.
What role does diversity and inclusion play in your coaching approach?
Mm. So, in the approach, there's not a piece of my framework that speaks to diversity and inclusion. But me being a Black woman coach and also a therapist who is culturally informed, I bring that into my work. I just bring it into my everyday work, particularly in areas where culture plays a huge impact.
Yes.
Because not every client I work with does culture play a huge impact in some of their behaviors. But there are other individuals, and I will speak for myself being a Black woman,
Yeah.
culture does play a huge role in, the lives of a Black woman and a Black male. And so when I am working with individuals who require that level of insight or that level of questioning, I bring that into my work.
So then, speaking about culture, how do you think organizations can foster a culture of self-mastery among employees?
The first thing is they have to lead by example. And I've been a corporate consultant for a long time, and I can tell you, and I've all the levels, Jackie, from, a basic everyday worker to a middle manager to, a senior level. They have to lead by example because what the employees are a bit more savvy than I think that the leadership gives them credit for. They can see if an organization is talk and they can see if an organization is about action. And so it really, really starts at the top of delivering the message that we really value a culture of diversity. And these are the actions and these are the steps that we're taking to let you all know this. If they just have it written on, their values or on their SharePoint site, it means nothing if the top is not living and breathing culture and diversity in the organization. And then also, the same thing with what you just asked about, personal growth.
Yeah.
If they see that the leaders are not trying to develop themselves, then the employees are not going to try to develop themselves. You have to really, really embed it in the everyday actions of the organization.
So, Candace, this leads me to ask you then, how do you maintain your own self-mastery while helping others on their journey?
Absolutely. Every day I'm growing. Every day I'm growing. One of my core values is actually, I call it aha moments. I just named it for myself.
Yeah.
But I am a lifelong learner. And so every day I was actually in a grocery store yesterday with my son, and I keep a book in my purse. And so when I'm standing in line in the a supermarket, instead of, scrolling through my phone, I whip out my book and I'm reading, I'm growing, I meditate every day. I'm actually a meditation teacher as well. And I think that personal growth and self mastery is, you're always growing. You never reach a level to where you have nothing to learn. And so it's such an ingrained part of my life at this point that I don't even have to sit down and think about, like, what's the next thing I'm going to do. I
Yeah.
go to conferences constantly. I am always just a ball of, what else can I learn?
Well, I could tell, I can tell, and it's very inspirational. But my final question to you, Candace, what advice would you give to listeners who want to start their own journey of self-mastery?
The advice, well, the first thing I would say to any of your listeners who want to start a journey is, that's the first step, is desire, because that is a huge leap above other people who are still in a space of, I am self-aware and I do have this and I do have that, because so many of us, we're just like so repulsed by the words personal growth and, self-improvement. I did a survey one day, and one of the responses on my survey was actually kind of the vomit emoji. When I asked them about self-improvement, that was the response on the survey. And so there are people in the world who really are just repulsed by the idea of personal growth. And so if you want to start that journey, first, I'm going to congratulate you. And then I'll say, start wherever you are. If you're ready to work with somebody, do some research, reach out. You can always reach out to me, Candace at mahoganycc.com. But I'd say even just start with journaling. Sit down, just whip out your journal and ask yourself 3 questions at the end of the day, right? You can start with, was I perceived today the way that I wanted to be perceived? How did I show up at work today? And, what didn't go well for me today, and how can I be better tomorrow? 3 questions. Just sit down and start with a reflection habit.
Yeah.
And if you start to uncover things, or if you feel like you want to dive a little bit deeper, there's so many ways to dive deeper. You can read books, you can work with a coach, you can, of course, come and have an Enneagram. So many ways to launch a personal growth and a self-development journey.
And gratitude, expressing gratitude after you do
Expressing
those 3 questions.
gratitude.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes. Yes. Candace Ramsey, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciated your coming out.
Yes, I really appreciate you having me on. Such a great discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us as we uncovered the path to happiness with Candace Ramsey. Her insights on clarity, purpose, and growth remind us that joy is within reach for everyone. Until next time, keep exploring the many facets of happiness and owning your next move. I'm Jackie Denise.